The long-awaited return to the blood-soaked sands of the Colosseum has finally arrived. Gladiator 2, released in 2024, is an epic historical action drama that picks up decades after the original Oscar-winning film captivated audiences in 2000. Directed by Ridley Scott, the visionary filmmaker behind the original, this sequel has stirred anticipation across the industry, reuniting Scott with a world he helped immortalize. The screenplay is penned by David Scarpa, known for his work on All the Money in the World, ensuring a script that balances spectacle with emotional weight. This film has attracted significant attention not only due to the legacy of its predecessor, but also because of the bold creative choices it makes. Set in a changing Roman Empire, it introduces a new generation of characters while honoring the mythos established by Maximus Decimus Meridius. The casting of rising star Paul Mescal, alongside seasoned talents like Denzel Washington and Pedro Pascal, has generated widespread buzz and curiosity among both longtime fans and newcomers. Gladiator 2 stands out as a rare sequel that dares to follow in the footsteps of a classic, aiming to redefine what historical epics can be in modern cinema. With Ridley Scott returning to the helm and a powerful ensemble cast, the film promises a blend of political intrigue, brutal combat, and timeless storytelling that could once again reshape the genre. The journey of Gladiator 2, from concept to screen, spans over 2 decades, making its production history one of the most fascinating in recent Hollywood memory. After the massive critical and commercial success of Gladiator in 2000, conversations about a sequel began almost immediately. However, the idea remained dormant for years due to the narrative closure of the first film and the difficulty of continuing a story whose main character, Maximus, had died. Ridley Scott, while open to returning to the Roman epic, insisted that any sequel would need a meaningful and dramatically grounded direction rather than a commercial rehash. The project gained serious momentum in the late 2010s when screenwriter David Scarpa, who had previously collaborated with Scott, was brought on board. Scarpa's approach was to shift the focus to Lucius, the now-grown son of Lucilla and the nephew of Commodus. This creative decision allowed the sequel to explore Rome from a fresh generational perspective, while still maintaining ties to the original's legacy. Ridley Scott was reportedly drawn to the idea of revisiting the grandeur and brutality of ancient Rome with modern filmmaking tools and a new thematic lens focused on identity, power, and legacy. Casting was one of the most talked-about aspects of production. Paul Mescal, who earned acclaim for his performance in After Sun, was chosen to portray Lucius. His casting marked a deliberate effort to infuse the film with fresh talent capable of delivering emotional complexity and physical intensity. Denzel Washington joined the project in a mysterious and powerful role, adding gravitas and global appeal, while Pedro Pascal was cast as a Roman general, bringing his own blend of charisma and versatility. The return of Connie Nielsen as Lucilla provided a direct connective tissue to the first film, anchoring the sequel in emotional continuity. Filming began in 2023 in locations across Morocco, Malta, and the UK, using a combination of practical sets and modern visual effects to recreate the splendor and brutality of ancient Rome. Scott's meticulous attention to historical authenticity and visual storytelling once again shaped the film's identity, with large-scale battle sequences and intricate political drama woven together in a way that mirrors his original masterpiece while reflecting a more complex, modern sensibility. Despite various challenges, including scheduling conflicts and the logistical hurdles of coordinating a sprawling international cast and crew, Gladiator 2 emerged as a major cinematic event. Its production reflects both a reverence for the past and a bold ambition to expand the mythology into new territory. The journey to Gladiator 2 began as early as the mid-2000s, when discussions of a sequel first surfaced following the original film's critical and commercial success. However, the project remained dormant for years due to narrative challenges, particularly how to continue the story after the death of Maximus. It wasn't until Ridley Scott revisited the idea with screenwriter David Scarpa that the sequel gained momentum, focusing on Lucius, the nephew of Commodus, as the central character. This shift allowed the film to explore legacy, memory, and the enduring impact of heroism without undermining the original's emotional closure. Casting played a pivotal role in shaping the film's identity. Paul Mescal was chosen to portray Lucius, bringing a fresh intensity and emotional depth to the role. His casting was met with enthusiasm, especially given his rising acclaim in character-driven dramas. Denzel Washington joined the ensemble as a powerful figure from Lucius's past, adding gravitas and complexity. Pedro Pascal and Joseph Quinn further enriched the cast, while Connie Nielsen reprised her role as Lucilla, providing continuity and emotional resonance. Behind the scenes, Ridley Scott's vision was instrumental in defining the film's aesthetic and tone. Drawing from his experience on Napoleon, Scott employed the ARRI Alexa Mini LF camera to capture both sweeping battle sequences and intimate character moments with cinematic precision. His commitment to practical effects over CGI preserved the tactile realism that distinguished the original Gladiator. Massive sets were constructed to recreate ancient Rome, and the production team emphasized historical authenticity in costume design, architecture, and combat choreography. Scott's approach blended innovation with tradition. He utilized IMAX technology to enhance the immersive experience, while maintaining his signature style of dynamic, emotionally charged storytelling. The result is a film that honors its predecessor while forging a distinct narrative path, one rooted in personal transformation, political upheaval, and the timeless spectacle of the arena. Set decades after the fall of Emperor Commodus, Gladiator II returns to a Rome that is both familiar and transformed, an empire teetering between legacy and change. The story follows Lucius, once a young boy inspired by the heroics of Maximus, now a grown man caught between his noble bloodline and a world ruled by ambition, betrayal, and shifting power. Rome is no longer just a land of emperors and generals. It is a fractured realm where old alliances crumble and new ideologies take root. The central conflict revolves around Lucius's internal struggle with identity and purpose as he's pulled into the brutal political and military machinery of the empire. Raised far from the Roman court, he returns to a world he barely recognizes, one that reveres the memory of gladiators while still enslaving men for sport. As Rome faces threats from both within and beyond its borders, Lucius is forced to reckon with his legacy, his loyalties, and the cost of survival in a society built on spectacle and power. The tone of Gladiator II blends sweeping historical drama with gritty, emotionally charged action. It carries the philosophical weight of the original film, questions of justice, freedom, and sacrifice, while introducing a more intimate narrative rooted in character evolution rather than pure revenge or conquest. This sequel delves deeper into the politics of Rome and the psychology of those who must navigate it. What makes the story particularly compelling is its balance of legacy and reinvention. While fans of the original will recognize thematic echoes and visual callbacks, the film charts its own path by introducing fresh motivations, moral ambiguity, and unexpected alliances. Without relying on nostalgia alone, Gladiator II stands as a story about how history shapes men, and how men, in turn, reshape history. Set nearly 2 decades after the death of Maximus, Gladiator II unfolds in a Rome ruled by twin emperors whose decadence and cruelty have plunged the empire into political instability. The story centers on Lucius Verus, now grown and living under the name Hanno in the North African kingdom of Numidia. His peaceful life is shattered when Roman forces invade, setting in motion a journey that will test his identity, convictions, and legacy. The film's central conflict emerges as Lucius is thrust into the brutal world of gladiatorial combat, where survival demands both physical prowess and emotional resilience. As he rises through the ranks of the arena, he grapples with the ghosts of his past and the weight of his lineage. The tone is both operatic and introspective, balancing visceral spectacle with meditative reflections on power, memory, and destiny. What makes the narrative compelling is its layered approach to legacy. Rather than retreading the arc of Maximus, the film explores how Lucius must forge his own path amid echoes of his father's legend. The political intrigue surrounding the emperors, the enigmatic figure of Macrinus, and the moral ambiguity of Rome's elite add texture to the story, elevating it beyond a simple revenge tale. With sweeping visuals and emotionally charged performances, Gladiator II crafts a narrative that honors its predecessor while carving out a distinct thematic identity. At the heart of Gladiator 2 lies a cast of richly layered characters whose personal journeys mirror the larger struggles of an empire on the brink. These are not mere archetypes of heroes and villains. Each character carries emotional depth, hidden motives, and evolving convictions that add nuance and gravity to the unfolding drama. Lucius, portrayed with quiet intensity by Paul Mescal, emerges as the central figure in the story. Once the wide-eyed boy who idolized Maximus, Lucius is now a conflicted man shaped by exile, uncertainty, and a longing for identity. Raised away from the imperial court and disconnected from his past, he returns to Rome to find a society that thrives on violence and spectacle. Mescal brings a grounded vulnerability to the role, portraying Lucius as someone torn between the values he was taught and the ruthless pragmatism demanded by the world around him. His arc is one of self-discovery and redefinition, where loyalty, legacy, and survival become intertwined. Denzel Washington commands the screen in a powerful, enigmatic role, an influential man operating from the shadows of Rome's elite. Though not a senator or emperor, his wealth, intellect, and strategic mind make him a force to be reckoned with. His character embodies the moral ambiguity of power, neither hero nor villain, but someone who plays the long game. Washington infuses the role with quiet menace and regal confidence, elevating each scene he's in with controlled intensity and emotional weight. Pedro Pascal delivers a layered performance as Marcus Acacius, a seasoned general torn between duty to Rome and his growing disillusionment with its leadership. As a soldier, he is decisive and disciplined. As a man, he struggles with the cost of obedience in a corrupt system. Pascal's charisma makes Acacius a compelling figure, someone whose moral compass is in constant flux, giving the film a human center amidst political turmoil. Connie Nielsen returns as Lucilla, the former princess and mother of Lucius. Older and wiser, she now operates with caution and resolve, scarred by past betrayals yet fiercely protective of her son's future. Her presence anchors the film emotionally, serving as a bridge between the legacy of Maximus and the uncertain present. Nielsen delivers a performance filled with dignity, sorrow, and resilience, embodying a woman who has endured Rome's brutality but refuses to be broken by it. Together, these characters form a complex web of relationships, ideologies, and personal stakes. Their development throughout the film reflects broader questions about power, freedom, identity, and redemption, making Gladiator 2 not just a continuation of an epic, but a character-driven story with emotional resonance and thematic depth. Gladiator 2 presents a compelling ensemble of characters whose personal journeys reflect the film's broader themes of legacy, vengeance, and moral ambiguity. Each character is shaped not only by their narrative function, but also by the nuanced performances of the actors who inhabit them. Lucius Verus, Paul Mescal. As the film's protagonist, Lucius is a man torn between the peaceful life he once knew and the brutal legacy he inherits. Raised in exile under the name Hanno, his motivations are rooted in survival, identity, and a growing desire for justice. Mescal portrays Lucius with restrained intensity, capturing both the character's internal conflict and his transformation from reluctant fighter to symbol of resistance. His arc mirrors Maximus's in structure but diverges in emotional tone. Lucius is not driven by loyalty to Rome but by disillusionment and personal loss. Macrinus, Denzel Washington. Macrinus is a wealthy Roman arms dealer and former soldier whose ambition and cunning make him one of the film's most enigmatic figures. Washington infuses the character with gravitas and menace, portraying him as a man intoxicated by power yet capable of strategic empathy. Macrinus sees potential in Lucius and manipulates events to serve his own ends, blurring the line between mentor and exploiter. His scenes are electric, often dominating the screen with quiet authority and layered menace. General Marcus Acacius, Pedro Pascal. Acacius is a conflicted Roman general and Lucilla's husband, whose loyalty to the empire is tested by personal ties and moral dilemmas. Pascal brings depth to a character who could easily have been one-dimensional, portraying Acacius as a man caught between duty and conscience. His relationship with Lucius evolves from adversarial to complex, and his emotional vulnerability adds texture to the film's exploration of honor and betrayal. Lucilla, Connie Nielsen. Returning from the original film, Lucilla serves as a bridge between past and present. Now a seasoned political figure, she is both a survivor and a strategist. Nielsen's performance is marked by quiet strength and emotional restraint, portraying Lucilla as a woman who has endured loss and made difficult choices to protect her son and preserve Rome's future. Her interactions with Lucius are charged with unresolved tension and maternal regret, enriching the film's emotional core. Emperor Geta, Joseph Quinn, and Emperor Caracalla, Fred Heckinger. The twin emperors represent Rome's descent into decadence and cruelty. Quinn's Geta is more poised and calculating, while Heckinger's Caracalla is erratic and childlike, often veering into madness. Together, they embody the instability of imperial rule. Their performances, though stylized, serve as effective contrasts to the grounded moral struggles of the protagonists, amplifying the stakes of rebellion and resistance. Senator Gracchus, Derek Jacobi. As one of the few returning characters, Gracchus offers continuity and wisdom. Jacobi reprises his role with dignified weariness, portraying a man who still believes in the possibility of a just Rome. His alliance with Lucilla and Lucius underscores the film's theme of legacy and the enduring fight for reform. Each character in Gladiator 2 contributes to a tapestry of personal and political conflict, brought to life by a cast that balances spectacle with emotional depth. Their arcs are not merely vehicles for action but reflections of the film's central question: what does it mean to fight for something greater than oneself? The supporting cast of Gladiator 2 adds vital layers to the story, enriching the world of ancient Rome with diverse perspectives, loyalties, and tensions that deepen the protagonist's journey. Far from mere background figures, these secondary characters shape the stakes of the narrative and reflect the complex web of power, identity, and survival that surrounds Lucius. One of the most pivotal supporting figures is the young emperor, an ambitious and inexperienced ruler who symbolizes both the fragility of Rome's political system and the dangers of unchecked authority. His erratic behavior and hunger for legacy mirror the hubris once seen in Commodus, casting a long shadow over Lucius's moral decisions. His presence fuels much of the internal and external conflict, as Rome teeters between tyranny and revolution. Joseph Quinn plays an imperial official and political advisor who walks a fine line between manipulation and diplomacy. His character embodies the intellectual elite of Rome, those who understand that survival requires more than brute force. Through whispered deals and double-edged counsel, he introduces themes of deception and ideological decay. Quinn's sharp performance balances charisma with cunning, making his interactions with both allies and enemies unpredictably tense. A standout role comes from Fred Heckinger, who portrays a fellow gladiator or rebel figure depending on the plot's evolving power dynamics. His bond, or rivalry, with Lucius becomes a crucial mirror of the protagonist's internal battle between pacifism and violence. Whether friend, foil, or both, he brings youthful recklessness and moral urgency to the story, pushing Lucius to confront the darker aspects of himself and the world he's fighting to understand. May Calamoy's character offers a quieter but emotionally resonant presence, a healer, intellectual, or displaced noble who forms a subtle yet pivotal connection with Lucius. She represents the forgotten voices of Rome, the women, the enslaved, the powerless. Her influence on Lucius is not through spectacle but through compassion, shaping his worldview in more profound and lasting ways than the battlefield ever could. Together, these secondary characters provide ideological contrast and emotional texture to the central narrative. Each one is positioned along the moral and political spectrum of the empire, forcing Lucius, and the audience, to navigate a world where no choice is simple and no allegiance is absolute. Their interactions form a living portrait of Rome itself, fractured, unpredictable, and full of individuals trying to reclaim their humanity in the shadow of power. Beyond the central figures, Gladiator 2 features a rich tapestry of secondary characters who deepen the film's thematic resonance and propel Lucius's transformation. These supporting roles are not mere background, they serve as emotional anchors, ideological foils, and narrative catalysts. Ravi, Lior Raz. A former gladiator turned healer, Ravi offers Lucius both physical aid and philosophical guidance. His presence introduces a quieter form of resistance, one rooted in compassion and survival rather than vengeance. Ravi's scenes provide moments of introspection, allowing Lucius to confront the cost of violence and the possibility of redemption. Raz's grounded performance lends authenticity to the character, making Ravi a moral compass amid the chaos. Senator Gracchus, Derek Jacobi. Returning from the original film, Gracchus embodies continuity and political idealism. His alliance with Lucilla and quiet defiance against the twin emperors reinforce the theme of enduring resistance. Jacobi's portrayal is marked by weary dignity, suggesting a man who has seen Rome's decline but still believes in its potential for reform. His mentorship of Lucius adds gravitas to the younger man's journey, framing it within a broader historical struggle. Emperor Geta and Emperor Caracalla, Joseph Quinn and Fred Heckinger. Though technically antagonists, the twin emperors function as thematic symbols of Rome's decay. Quinn's Geta is coldly calculating, while Heckinger's Caracalla veers into erratic cruelty. Their dynamic, often laced with dark humor and grotesque indulgence, underscores the absurdity of unchecked power. These characters heighten the stakes for Lucius, illustrating what Rome has become and what must be challenged. Their stylized performances contrast sharply with the grounded emotional arcs of the protagonists, amplifying the film's operatic tone. Gladiator Ensemble. Lucius's fellow fighters, though not individually spotlighted, contribute to the film's emotional texture. Their camaraderie, shared trauma, and fleeting moments of joy humanize the brutal world of the arena. These characters reflect the collective cost of empire and the resilience of those forced to endure it. Their interactions with Lucius help shape his evolving sense of purpose, transforming him from a lone survivor into a reluctant leader. Together, these secondary characters enrich Gladiator 2 by reinforcing its core themes: legacy, resistance, and the search for meaning in a fractured world. Their impact is felt not only in plot mechanics but in the emotional and philosophical weight they bring to Lucius's journey. The acting performances in Gladiator 2 are a defining strength of the film, delivering both emotional weight and narrative authenticity that elevate the sequel beyond mere spectacle. The cast brings a layered humanity to their roles, transforming the grand historical setting into a deeply personal and emotionally charged story. Paul Mescal leads with a performance that is both physically commanding and emotionally introspective. As Lucius, he captures the internal conflict of a man shaped by myth but unsure of his place in a brutal world. Mescal's ability to convey quiet pain, restrained anger, and moments of reflection without overplaying them is one of the film's most compelling elements. His character's journey from disillusionment to self-determination feels organic and earned, making him a worthy successor to the legacy of Maximus. Denzel Washington brings his signature gravitas and quiet power to a complex role that operates in the moral gray areas of the story. His screen presence is magnetic, often dominating scenes with subtle expression and calculated stillness rather than volume or aggression. He plays a character who knows how to use words as weapons, and Washington's delivery is razor-sharp, often stealing scenes with just a glance or a line of dialogue layered with meaning. Pedro Pascal offers one of the film's most nuanced performances as General Marcus Acacius. There's a deep weariness in his portrayal, a man who has given everything to Rome and is now haunted by what remains. Pascal's chemistry with Mescal is particularly strong. Their dynamic evolves from cautious alliance to emotional confrontation, offering some of the film's most gripping moments. A standout scene involving a battlefield decision and its aftermath captures the tension between duty and morality in a way that lingers long after the credits roll. Connie Nielsen reprises her role as Lucilla with elegance and strength. Her performance reflects the passage of time. Lucilla is no longer the fragile court figure of the first film but a survivor hardened by experience. Nielsen and Mescal share a subtle mother-son bond that is never over-explained, relying on glances, silences, and gestures to express years of separation and unresolved pain. Their scenes together are some of the most emotionally resonant in the film, providing a core of emotional truth amid the chaos of war and politics. Among the supporting cast, Joseph Quinn delivers a sharp, cold, and often disturbingly charismatic performance as an imperial strategist, while Fred Heckinger brings youthful unpredictability and emotional volatility to his role. Their interactions with the leads add layers of tension and unpredictability that enhance the drama. In terms of chemistry, the cast feels remarkably cohesive. Even in scenes of conflict or betrayal, the emotional currents between the characters feel genuine. There's a palpable sense of history between many of them, whether from shared trauma, political rivalry, or buried affection, that grounds the film's more operatic elements in real human connection. If there's a weakness, it may lie in the limited screen time for certain characters whose arcs feel truncated in favor of the central trio. Some supporting roles are more archetypal than fully realized, though strong performances often compensate for that lack of development. Overall, the acting in Gladiator 2 is intense, emotionally intelligent, and driven by a cast fully committed to embodying the brutal elegance of ancient Rome. The performances don't just serve the narrative, they deepen it, challenge it, and give it the heart that makes the film truly memorable. Gladiator 2 boasts a formidable ensemble whose performances elevate the film's emotional and thematic weight, even when the narrative occasionally leans on familiar beats. The cast's chemistry and individual strengths contribute to a layered portrayal of power, legacy, and personal reckoning. Paul Mescal as Lucius delivers a performance marked by physical intensity and emotional restraint. While some critics have noted that the role doesn't fully tap into the emotional complexity Mescal has shown in previous work, his portrayal of Lucius is nonetheless compelling. He captures the character's internal struggle with quiet ferocity, particularly in scenes where Lucius confronts the brutality of the arena and the ghosts of his lineage. His chemistry with Connie Nielsen's Lucilla is subdued but poignant, reflecting years of estrangement and unresolved tension. Denzel Washington's Macrinus is a standout. His commanding presence and layered delivery bring gravitas to a morally ambiguous character. Washington's ability to dominate scenes with minimal dialogue adds depth to Macrinus's manipulative charisma. His interactions with Mescal are charged with subtle power dynamics, and his scenes with the twin emperors reveal a masterclass in restrained menace. Pedro Pascal as General Acacius offers one of the film's most emotionally resonant performances. His portrayal balances stoicism with vulnerability, especially in moments where Acacius's loyalty to Rome clashes with his personal convictions. Pascal's chemistry with Nielsen is particularly strong, adding complexity to their relationship and grounding the political stakes in personal emotion. Connie Nielsen reprises Lucilla with quiet strength. While some viewers felt her role was underutilized, Nielsen imbues her scenes with emotional depth, especially in moments of maternal conflict and political calculation. Her performance anchors the film's continuity with the original and adds a layer of gravitas to Lucius's journey. Joseph Quinn and Fred Heckinger as the twin emperors bring theatrical flair to their roles. Quinn's Geta is cold and calculating, while Heckinger's Caracalla veers into erratic cruelty. Though their characters are stylized and occasionally one-dimensional, their dynamic adds tension and absurdity to the imperial court. Heckinger's portrayal, in particular, has been noted for its unsettling unpredictability. Among the supporting cast, Lior Raz as Ravi offers a grounded counterpoint to the film's grandiosity. His scenes with Mescal provide moments of introspection and emotional clarity, reinforcing the film's themes of healing and resistance. Memorable scenes include Lucius's first arena battle, which showcases Mescal's physical commitment and emotional turmoil, and a tense confrontation between Macrinus and the emperors that underscores Washington's quiet dominance. Pascal's final moments in the film are also widely praised for their emotional impact and thematic resonance. Overall, the cast's performances are a key strength of Gladiator 2. While some roles could have benefited from deeper development, the ensemble's chemistry and individual portrayals lend the film a sense of gravitas and emotional authenticity that transcends its more formulaic elements. Ridley Scott's directorial stamp is unmistakably present in Gladiator 2, reaffirming his mastery of epic storytelling while evolving his visual and thematic language for a new generation. Known for his grandiose scale, painterly composition, and meticulous world-building, Scott brings a heightened level of cinematic craftsmanship to the sequel, honoring the tone of the original while forging a darker, more introspective path. Scott's use of framing remains one of his most powerful tools. Wide, sweeping shots of ancient Rome and its sprawling arenas are juxtaposed with tight, intimate close-ups that capture the emotional turmoil of the characters. He frequently isolates figures within grand architectural spaces, reinforcing themes of solitude, burden, and power. His camera lingers on faces just long enough to extract meaning, letting silence and expression drive the emotion before sweeping us back into the chaos of war or political tension. The pacing in Gladiator 2 is deliberate, often meditative, and punctuated by sudden, visceral bursts of action. Scott doesn't rush character development or philosophical exchanges. He allows the drama to simmer, using long takes and minimal cuts to immerse the viewer in the mood and gravity of each scene. This slow-burn approach may feel more reflective than the original, but it's in service of a narrative that's less about revenge and more about identity, power, and consequence. Tonally, the film walks a tightrope between operatic grandeur and raw human struggle. There's a grim realism to the battles and politics, a refusal to romanticize Rome's glory, that echoes Scott's work in Kingdom of Heaven and The Last Duel. Death, betrayal, and ambition are treated not as sensational plot devices, but as inevitable consequences of a broken system. The brutality feels earned, not gratuitous, and is always underscored by emotional or thematic weight. Thematically, Scott revisits familiar ground: the collapse of empires, the nature of honor, the role of myth in shaping identity. Like Maximus before him, Lucius becomes a figure caught between legend and reality, a recurring Scott archetype of the reluctant hero forced into transformation by forces beyond his control. The director's fascination with flawed systems and men trying to navigate them is central here, giving the film a philosophical spine that separates it from most modern blockbusters. Visually, the film is richly textured. Natural lighting, dusty earth tones, and practical effects dominate the visual palette. Scott resists overusing CGI, grounding the spectacle in physical sets and real environments. The action sequences, though fewer than in the original, are brutal, chaotic, and shot with an immediacy that avoids glamorizing the violence. His battlefield choreography emphasizes confusion, impact, and exhaustion over choreographed spectacle. What truly defines Scott's direction here is his confidence in letting the film breathe. He trusts the performances, the weight of silence, and the complexity of the setting to carry scenes without excess exposition. At 85, Ridley Scott directs Gladiator 2 with the precision of a veteran and the boldness of a filmmaker still pushing himself artistically. His fingerprints are on every frame, and the result is a sequel that feels both deeply personal and undeniably epic. Ridley Scott's direction in Gladiator 2 reflects both his enduring cinematic trademarks and a willingness to evolve with contemporary filmmaking tools. Known for his dynamic visual storytelling and meticulous attention to atmosphere, Scott once again crafts a world that feels both mythic and grounded in historical texture. His use of framing emphasizes scale and intimacy in equal measure. Wide shots of the Colosseum and Roman architecture evoke grandeur and imperial decay, while close-ups isolate characters in moments of emotional reckoning. This duality, epic scope paired with personal struggle, is a hallmark of Scott's style, seen previously in films like Kingdom of Heaven and Napoleon. The ARRI Alexa Mini LF camera plays a crucial role here, allowing for fluid movement and rich depth of field that enhances both action and introspection. Pacing in Gladiator 2 is brisk, reflecting Scott's preference for momentum over indulgence. Paul Mescal described the directing style as super fast, likening it to the rhythm of competitive sports. This urgency translates into a narrative that rarely lingers, pushing characters through conflict and transformation with kinetic energy. While this approach sacrifices some emotional breathing room, it maintains tension and forward drive. Tonally, the film balances operatic spectacle with grounded emotion. Scott's signature blend of realism and stylization is evident in the battle sequences: visceral, chaotic, and often shot with handheld immediacy. The use of practical effects over CGI, especially in arena scenes, reinforces the tactile authenticity that defined the original Gladiator. Even when digital enhancements are employed, they serve the story rather than dominate it. Scott's trademarks, strong visual composition, thematic ambition, and a preference for morally complex protagonists, are all present. His depiction of Rome is not just a setting but a character, embodying decay, ambition, and the weight of history. The use of IMAX technology further amplifies this immersion, making the spectacle feel monumental without losing narrative focus. In essence, Gladiator 2 is a continuation of Ridley Scott's cinematic ethos, a fusion of epic storytelling, technical precision, and emotional resonance. It's a film that honors his legacy while embracing the tools of modern filmmaking to tell a story both timeless and timely. The screenplay of Gladiator 2, penned by David Scarpa, is a thoughtful, emotionally grounded continuation of the original film's legacy, offering a story that is both character-driven and thematically rich. Scarpa, known for his ability to blend historical drama with philosophical undercurrents, constructs a narrative that unfolds with deliberate pacing and emotional complexity, while staying true to the tone established by Ridley Scott's original Gladiator. The structure of the story flows with confidence, balancing large-scale historical events with intimate character arcs. Rather than rushing from one set piece to the next, the screenplay allows time for moral reflection, internal conflict, and political intrigue to simmer. Scenes often build slowly, giving the audience a sense of the pressure and uncertainty that defines Rome's crumbling institutions. The plot progression feels organic, driven more by character decisions than plot mechanics, a strength that reinforces the emotional authenticity of the film. Character voices are distinct and carefully crafted. Lucius's dialogue is measured and searching, reflecting his internal struggle and the weight of legacy he carries. His lines often reveal more in what's left unsaid, and Paul Mescal's restrained delivery enhances that subtlety. Denzel Washington's character, operating from the shadows of the Empire, speaks in layers of veiled threats and strategic insight. His words often carry a double meaning, rich in subtext, offering commentary on power, freedom, and manipulation without needing to be explicit. Pedro Pascal's dialogue as General Acacius stands out for its moral ambiguity. His lines are filled with weary pragmatism, expressing the frustration of a man who has served a system he no longer believes in. His exchanges with Lucius are particularly sharp, filled with tension, mutual respect, and ideological contrast. These conversations drive some of the film's most compelling philosophical themes, especially when war, duty, and identity clash. The screenplay also does a commendable job of reviving the poetic cadence of the original film. There's a mythic tone to much of the dialogue, but it never feels overwrought or theatrical. Instead, it balances elevated language with raw human emotion. Lines are often laced with historical gravitas, yet grounded in personal stakes. When characters speak of Rome, they are also speaking of survival, honor, and memory, lending the dialogue a sense of resonance and layered meaning. Subtext plays a critical role throughout. Themes of inherited trauma, the burden of expectations, and the illusion of control are explored not just through action, but through restrained, thoughtful dialogue. Several key exchanges are rich with meaning beyond the surface, forcing the viewer to read between the lines and consider each character's hidden motives or suppressed emotions. That said, the film occasionally leans into exposition, especially in moments where political dynamics or backstory need to be clarified. While this is sometimes necessary given the complexity of the setting, a few scenes feel more informative than immersive. However, these moments are relatively few and are usually delivered with enough emotional weight to maintain engagement. Overall, the screenplay for Gladiator 2 is mature, intelligent, and emotionally resonant. It respects the audience's ability to engage with moral complexity and layered storytelling, offering a narrative that is both timeless and deeply human. Scarpa's writing honors the spirit of the original while crafting a sequel that stands on its own, marked by thoughtful dialogue, compelling character arcs, and a narrative structure that rewards patience and reflection. David Scarpa's screenplay for Gladiator 2 is ambitious in scope and thematically rich, though its execution reveals both strengths and limitations. The writing aims to balance operatic grandeur with personal introspection, and while it succeeds in several key areas, it occasionally falters under the weight of its own expectations. The story's flow is largely coherent, structured around Lucius's transformation from exile to gladiator. Scarpa wisely avoids over-explaining backstory, instead relying on implication and subtext to fill narrative gaps. This restraint allows the audience to engage actively with the material, piecing together character motivations and historical context without being spoon-fed exposition. However, some transitions, particularly between political intrigue and arena spectacle, can feel abrupt, sacrificing emotional continuity for pacing. Character voices are distinct, though not uniformly compelling. Lucius's dialogue is sparse and introspective, reflecting his internal conflict and outsider status. While this minimalism suits his arc, it occasionally limits emotional access to the character. Macrinus, by contrast, is written with theatrical flair. His lines are laced with irony, menace, and philosophical musings that Denzel Washington delivers with relish. His voice stands out as the most textured and memorable, elevating scenes that might otherwise feel functional. The twin emperors, Geta and Caracalla, are stylized to the point of caricature. Their dialogue veers into excess, emphasizing decadence and madness, which serves the film's allegorical tone but risks undermining dramatic tension. Supporting characters like Ravi and Acacius are more grounded, offering moments of emotional clarity and moral ambiguity. Their exchanges with Lucius often carry the film's thematic weight, exploring ideas of redemption, loyalty, and resistance. Subtext is one of the screenplay's quiet strengths. The film explores legacy not just through plot but through layered interactions. Lucius's silence, Lucilla's guarded affection, and Macrinus's manipulative mentorship all hint at deeper emotional currents. The screenplay also uses visual motifs and recurring phrases, such as references to Virgil and Rome's decay, to reinforce its philosophical underpinnings. Authenticity varies. The dialogue occasionally slips into anachronistic phrasing or overly modern cadence, which can disrupt immersion. Yet in key scenes, particularly those involving political debate or gladiatorial introspection, the writing feels purposeful and resonant. The screenplay's emotional climax, though predictable, is executed with enough restraint to maintain impact. In sum, Scarpa's writing is thoughtful and thematically ambitious, with standout character voices and effective use of subtext. While not flawless, it reflects a clear understanding of the genre's demands and the legacy it seeks to honor. The screenplay may not redefine historical drama, but it contributes meaningfully to its evolution. The cinematography of Gladiator II is a visual triumph, both a homage to the classical beauty of the original film and a bold evolution of Ridley Scott's cinematic language. With Dariusz Wolski returning as director of photography, the film immerses the audience in a world that feels both mythic and tangible, balancing epic scope with personal intimacy through deliberate visual choices. Camera movement in the film is purposeful and fluid. Battle sequences feature dynamic tracking shots that plunge the viewer directly into the chaos of combat, often using handheld techniques to convey the disorientation and brutality of war. These moments contrast sharply with the stillness of political chambers and imperial halls, where slow pans and static frames suggest tension, manipulation, and the suffocating weight of power. The contrast between movement and stillness underscores the duality of Roman life, public spectacle versus private consequence. Shot composition plays a crucial narrative role. Wide landscape shots often dwarf characters against the grandeur of ancient cities or barren frontiers, visually reinforcing themes of insignificance and isolation. Scott and Wolski favor symmetrical framing and deep focus to evoke the aesthetic of classical paintings, with layers of visual information that invite repeat viewing. Interiors are often framed through columns, gates, or shadows, symbolizing entrapment or control, especially in scenes where characters are grappling with duty, guilt, or moral compromise. Lighting in Gladiator II is atmospheric and textured. Natural light dominates much of the film, especially in outdoor sequences where the sun filters through dust, smoke, or stone. This approach lends the visuals a weathered realism, anchoring the mythic tone in physical reality. Night scenes are bathed in firelight or the soft glow of oil lamps, creating dramatic contrasts of shadow and illumination that highlight emotional tension or spiritual ambiguity. The play between light and dark reflects the moral uncertainty of the characters and the empire itself. The color palette is rich yet restrained. Earth tones dominate: ochres, rusted reds, weathered browns, and desaturated golds, evoking the decay of empire and the blood-soaked soil of battlefields and arenas. These grounded hues are occasionally broken by vivid bursts: the crimson of Roman banners, the glint of polished armor, or the blue-gray skies before war. This contrast between muted environments and sudden vibrancy visually mirrors the characters' internal struggles and moments of heightened intensity. Visual storytelling is layered throughout the film. A single shot often conveys multiple meanings. A crumbling statue alludes to fading legacy, a lingering gaze reveals doubt or suppressed memory, a storm building on the horizon foreshadows inevitable conflict. Scott uses silence and imagery as narrative tools, allowing moments without dialogue to carry profound emotional or symbolic weight. The film trusts its visuals to tell the story as much as its words do. One of the most striking sequences involves Lucius stepping into the Colosseum for the first time. The camera circles him slowly as dust rises in the air, echoing the iconic entrance of Maximus decades earlier. This visual callback not only connects the two films emotionally but also signals the generational burden the character now bears. It's a moment of inherited memory, conveyed not through exposition, but through visual language alone. In sum, the cinematography of Gladiator 2 is a masterclass in visual storytelling. Every shot feels considered and thematically resonant, enhancing the film's emotional impact and narrative complexity. Wolski and Scott create a world that is immersive, haunting, and beautiful. A cinematic canvas where the grand scale of empire meets the fragile humanity of its characters. Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2 showcases a masterful blend of traditional cinematic craftsmanship and modern technological innovation, with cinematographer John Matheson BSc returning to expand the visual language of the original film. The cinematography is not merely decorative, it's integral to the film's emotional and thematic architecture. Camera movements and shot composition. Scott and Matheson employ dynamic camera work to heighten both spectacle and intimacy. The use of the ARRI Alexa Mini LF camera allows for fluid handheld shots during chaotic battle scenes, capturing visceral energy with immediacy. Wide-angle lenses are used to emphasize the grandeur of ancient Rome, while longer lenses isolate characters in moments of introspection, reinforcing emotional depth. Multi-camera setups were frequently used to capture complex action sequences from multiple angles, enhancing continuity and performance authenticity. Lighting and color palettes. Lighting in Gladiator 2 is deliberately varied to reflect shifts in tone and setting. Sun-drenched exteriors in Numidia evoke warmth and peace, contrasting sharply with the dim, firelit interiors of Roman villas and the shadowy brutality of the Colosseum. The color palette leans into earthy tones, ochres, deep reds, and muted golds, evoking a sense of historical realism while symbolizing decay and imperial excess. Scenes in the flooded Colosseum, for instance, use cool blues and murky greens to heighten tension and surrealism. Visual storytelling and mood. The film's visual storytelling is deeply tied to character psychology. Lucius's journey is framed through increasingly claustrophobic compositions, reflecting his loss of freedom and growing internal conflict. In contrast, scenes involving the twin emperors are often shot with exaggerated symmetry and opulence, underscoring their detachment from reality and descent into decadence. The use of practical effects, such as a mechanical rhinoceros and real sets built in Malta, grounds the film in tactile realism, enhancing immersion and emotional resonance. Innovative techniques. Scott's use of IMAX technology amplifies the immersive quality of the visuals, making the Colosseum battles and naval sequences feel monumental. The cinematography also benefits from seamless integration of practical and digital effects, with visual elements like water, fire, and crowd reactions meticulously layered to maintain authenticity without overwhelming the frame. In sum, the cinematography of Gladiator 2 is a triumph of visual storytelling, balancing epic scale with intimate emotion and tradition with innovation. It not only serves the narrative but elevates it, making the film a visceral and poetic experience. The production design of Gladiator 2 is an extraordinary achievement, meticulously crafted to transport viewers into a world that is both historically grounded and thematically resonant. From the grandeur of imperial palaces to the grime of blood-soaked arenas, every set, costume, and prop serves to build a richly textured Rome in decline, an empire still powerful, but visibly rotting from within. The sets are expansive and immersive, blending practical builds with subtle visual effects to enhance realism without overwhelming it. The Roman Forum, Senate halls, and royal chambers are designed with architectural accuracy, featuring towering marble columns, intricate mosaics, and faded frescoes that suggest a fading golden age. These interiors reflect the opulence of the empire, yet they're never pristine. Cracks in the stone, worn statues, and dimly lit corners quietly communicate a civilization past its prime. By contrast, the Colosseum and gladiatorial arenas are brutal and elemental. Reconstructed with a sense of physical weight and history, these locations serve as symbolic battlegrounds of legacy, power, and identity. The sand-covered floors, rusting gates, and splintered wooden corridors evoke both the spectacle and the savagery of Rome's public entertainment. These spaces pulse with tension, emphasizing the film's exploration of violence as both performance and punishment. Costume design is another standout component, reflecting status, ideology, and inner conflict. Roman nobles are adorned in richly dyed fabrics, fur-lined cloaks, and intricately embroidered tunics, while their armor glimmers with finely detailed engraving and imperial insignia. Denzel Washington's character, for example, wears regal attire that conveys silent authority, dark robes edged with gold, signaling influence more than brute force. Gladiators and soldiers, on the other hand, wear armor that is battered and functional, with leather, iron, and rough-woven cloth layered for utility rather than flair. Lucius's costuming evolves over the course of the film, starting in modest, travel-worn garb that underscores his separation from imperial power, and gradually transitioning into armor that carries the weight of his legacy, both literally and symbolically. Each outfit reflects his inner transformation, a visual arc that mirrors his psychological journey. The attention to cultural diversity in costume and set design also reflects the broader reach of the Roman Empire. From the North African provinces to the eastern frontiers, the film incorporates distinct regional aesthetics, different armor shapes, fabrics, hairstyles, and decorative motifs, creating a believable tapestry of Roman influence and its many conquered peoples. This not only adds authenticity, but also reinforces one of the film's central themes, the clash and convergence of identities within an empire. Props and minor set details also play a significant narrative role. Scrolls, coins, relics of past rulers, and religious icons subtly populate the backgrounds, hinting at the ideological and historical shifts brewing beneath the surface. The use of firelight, incense, and ceremonial items in rituals or royal gatherings helps ground the viewer in the spiritual and political world of the time. Overall, the production design, sets, and costumes of Gladiator 2 do more than reconstruct history. They amplify the story's themes of decay, rebirth, and moral ambiguity. Every environment and piece of clothing is in conversation with the narrative, helping to create a Rome that feels as emotionally charged as it is visually stunning. The production design of Gladiator 2 is a triumph of historical immersion and thematic symbolism, meticulously crafted to evoke the grandeur, decay, and brutality of ancient Rome. Ridley Scott's collaboration with production designer Arthur Max and costume designers Janty Yates and David Crossman results in a visual landscape that is both expansive and intimate, reflecting the film's dual focus on epic spectacle and personal transformation. The sets are monumental in scale and detail. Massive reconstructions of the Colosseum, Roman villas, and North African landscapes were built in Malta and Morocco, blending practical architecture with digital enhancements. The flooded Colosseum, a centerpiece of the film's visual identity, is particularly striking. Its waterlogged arena not only heightens the tension of gladiatorial combat but also symbolizes Rome's moral and political decay. Naval battle sequences and scenes of imperial opulence are framed with sweeping wide shots, allowing the audience to absorb the full scope of the empire's reach and excess. Costumes play a vital role in character differentiation and thematic expression. Janty Yates, returning from the original film, drew inspiration directly from Roman monuments and museum artifacts, crafting garments that reflect both historical accuracy and narrative symbolism. Lucius's armor evolves throughout the film, mirroring his transformation from exile to warrior. Macrinus's ornate robes and military garb convey power and manipulation, while the twin emperors' exaggerated attire, embroidered with symbols like twin Pegasi, underscores their detachment from reality and descent into theatrical tyranny. The gladiator costumes are particularly noteworthy. Each of the 150 unique designs created by Crossman and Yates was handmade, incorporating leather, metal, and synthetic materials to reflect the fighter's status, personality, and combat style. The armor worn by Glycio, the rhinoceros-riding gladiator, is heavily fortified and visually imposing, contrasting with Lucius's lighter, more agile gear. These choices enhance the storytelling by visually reinforcing character dynamics and thematic contrasts. Together, the production design, sets, and costumes of Gladiator 2 create a richly textured world that supports the film's narrative ambitions. They do more than recreate history. They interpret it, using visual language to explore legacy, resistance, and the spectacle of power. The musical score of Gladiator 2 is a haunting, emotionally resonant composition that enriches the film's epic scale while drawing deeply from its characters' inner lives. Crafted with great sensitivity and thematic precision, the soundtrack serves as a vital storytelling device, subtly guiding emotional tone, intensifying action, and grounding viewers in the mythic yet mournful world of ancient Rome. While Hans Zimmer's iconic score from the original Gladiator casts a long shadow, the sequel's music does not attempt to replicate it. Instead, it respectfully echoes its spirit while carving its own path. The composer, building on Zimmer's motifs with restraint, introduces a more introspective, somber tone, reflecting the film's emphasis on internal struggle over triumphant spectacle. The result is a score that feels emotionally mature, less concerned with grandeur for its own sake, and more with evoking memory, legacy, and personal transformation. The orchestration is a powerful blend of traditional Western strings and percussion, layered with regional instruments and choral elements that echo the film's multicultural setting. Deep cellos and war drums underscore moments of dread and political tension, while soaring violins and distant vocal chants elevate scenes of personal revelation or spiritual reckoning. The score seamlessly transitions between quiet intimacy and explosive grandeur, mirroring the film's shifting emotional landscape. One of the most effective aspects of the soundtrack is its use of thematic leitmotifs. Lucius is accompanied by a subtle, recurring melodic phrase, quiet and searching early on, but growing bolder and more fully orchestrated as his character arc progresses. This musical evolution enhances his transformation and gives viewers an unconscious emotional tether throughout the film. In scenes of battle or rebellion, the score intensifies with relentless rhythm and layered instrumentation, but it avoids the bombast typical of many historical epics. Instead, there's a controlled chaos to the sound, a reflection of the confusion, desperation, and moral ambiguity that permeates the film's depiction of violence. The music doesn't glorify war, it captures its cost. A standout emotional moment comes during a mother-son reunion scene, where the score strips down to minimal instrumentation, just piano, soft ambient tones, and a faint vocal harmony. The restraint of the composition allows the acting to shine while adding a tender, aching layer of emotional depth. These quieter moments are among the score's greatest strengths, using music not to overwhelm but to support character and atmosphere. The soundtrack also leans into silence when needed. Ridley Scott and the composer understand the value of withholding sound, letting tension build in the absence of music before reintroducing a theme at just the right emotional beat. This disciplined use of score amplifies key scenes, making the return of a motif or instrument all the more impactful. Overall, the music of Gladiator 2 is not just accompaniment, it's a living part of the narrative. It respects the legacy of the original while confidently establishing its own voice. Through its emotionally intelligent composition and dynamic range, the score heightens every aspect of the viewing experience, from the whispers of betrayal in the Senate to the roar of the crowd in the arena. It is an essential pillar of the film's atmosphere and emotional resonance. Harry Gregson Williams's score for Gladiator 2 is a bold and thoughtful evolution of the franchise's musical identity, balancing homage with innovation. Tasked with following Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerrard's iconic original soundtrack, Gregson Williams crafts a soundscape that reflects the sequel's darker tone and thematic complexity while introducing new motifs that resonate with the film's emotional core. The score opens with the Gladiator 2 overture, which subtly nods to Zimmer's original themes before transitioning into fresh melodic territory. Ethnic instruments and layered vocal textures, some inspired by Gerrard's ethereal style, create a sonic bridge between past and present. These choices immediately establish a sense of continuity while signaling a shift in narrative focus. Character-specific themes are central to the score's emotional architecture. Lucius's theme is introspective and brooding, often built around low strings and flute motifs that echo Maximus's legacy without replicating it. Lucilla's theme, heard in tracks like Now That I Have Found You, blends high woodwinds with melancholic undertones, reinforcing her emotional restraint and maternal conflict. Macrinus's presence is marked by ominous, low-register melodies that underscore his manipulative nature. Battle sequences are scored with rhythmic intensity rather than sweeping melodies, reflecting a modern approach to action scoring. Tracks like Lucius, Eris Hat and the Roman Invasion, and War, Real War, use percussive patterns, choral bursts, and ethnic instrumentation to heighten tension and chaos. This shift from thematic grandeur to atmospheric propulsion mirrors the film's darker, more fragmented world. The soundtrack also includes moments of lyrical beauty. I See Him in You and Echoes in Eternity evoke emotional resonance through sparse arrangements and subtle harmonic shifts. These pieces support key emotional beats, allowing the music to guide the viewer's experience without overwhelming the narrative. While some listeners may initially find the score less immediately memorable than its predecessor, repeated listens reveal its depth and intentionality. Gregson Williams's compositions reflect the film's themes of legacy, identity, and resistance, enhancing atmosphere and emotional impact through nuanced musical storytelling. The result is a score that respects the original's legacy while carving out its own place in the cinematic canon. The sound design and visual effects of Gladiator 2 work in perfect harmony to create an immersive, visceral cinematic experience that honors the gritty realism of the ancient world while delivering moments of awe-inspiring spectacle. Every sound, be it the clash of swords, the roar of a crowd, or the quiet creak of imperial halls, serves to pull the viewer deeper into the emotional and physical reality of the film. The sound design is layered, textured, and precise. In the film's combat sequences, the impact of every strike feels tactile. You hear the weight of steel against shield, the crunch of armor, and the crack of bones with a grounded authenticity that avoids exaggeration. These details enhance the brutal realism of the gladiatorial world. Violence is not romanticized. It's chaotic, loud, and painful. Crowd reactions in the arena are mixed with distant chants, animal roars, and fluttering banners, creating a soundscape that conveys the mass hysteria and moral ambiguity of public bloodsport. Beyond the arena, subtler sounds play an equally important role. The echo of footsteps in a marble corridor, the creaking of leather armor, or the whispered breath of a character preparing for betrayal all build tension without needing visual accompaniment. These ambient elements are never overbearing but are always present, grounding the film in a sensory realism that enhances its psychological intensity. Environmental sound cues are also carefully deployed to signify shifts in mood and location. Scenes set in the Senate chambers feature hushed tones and reverberating voices, emphasizing the cold, calculated nature of political power. In contrast, desert battlefields and frontier outposts are filled with howling winds, distant animal cries, and the murmur of soldiers, signaling both physical desolation and emotional isolation. The auditory landscape deepens the thematic contrasts between civilization and chaos, opulence and decay. The use of silence is particularly effective. In moments of loss, moral reckoning, or personal revelation, the sound design drops into near silence, allowing a breath between scenes. This use of negative space enhances emotional impact, often making the return of music or ambient noise more powerful and jarring. On the visual effects front, Gladiator 2 succeeds by prioritizing subtlety and integration over spectacle. The effects serve the story rather than overshadow it. Digital enhancements are used to extend cityscapes, recreate the Colosseum in full glory, and populate large-scale battle sequences, but they're seamlessly woven into the practical sets and natural lighting. There is a distinct lack of artificial gloss. Textures remain rough, lighting is consistent, and visual effects are grounded in a tactile reality. Whether it's fire engulfing a siege engine, dust clouds rising in a chariot charge, or the subtle decay of Roman architecture, the visual effects are remarkably restrained and detailed. They never feel like modern impositions but rather invisible tools used to enhance the atmosphere and scale of the narrative. In more symbolic or emotionally heightened moments, such as dreamlike flashbacks or hallucinations, visual and sound design fuse to create surreal, lyrical sequences. The blending of echoing voices, slowed motion, and shifting light allows the audience to step into the mind of the characters, especially Lucius, adding an emotional and psychological depth that transcends straightforward historical drama. In summary, the sound design and effects in Gladiator 2 are masterfully crafted, never drawing undue attention to themselves yet crucial to the film's immersive power. They heighten realism, build tension, and support the story's emotional beats with precision and artistry. The result is a film that feels as lived in as it does cinematic, a sensory journey through the heart of a crumbling empire. The sound design and special effects in Gladiator 2 are integral to its immersive storytelling, elevating both the visceral intensity of combat and the psychological depth of its characters. Ridley Scott's team, led by supervising sound editors Danny Sheehan and Matt Collinge, along with re-recording mixer Paul Massey and production sound mixer Stephen Bucher, crafted a sonic landscape that complements the film's epic scale and emotional nuance. The sound design emphasizes realism and emotional resonance. Crowd reactions in the Colosseum were meticulously layered to reflect shifting moods. Cheers, gasps, and silence become narrative tools that mirror Lucius's journey. Foley effects, such as the clatter of armor, the slicing of blades, and the roar of exotic beasts, were custom recorded to heighten authenticity. Notably, the team created bespoke sounds for scenes involving wild baboons, a battle-armored rhinoceros, and even sharks in the flooded arena, blending natural recordings with stylized enhancements. Dialogue and ambient sound were treated with precision. The production sound team worked closely with post-production to ensure clarity amid chaos, allowing emotional beats to emerge even during large-scale battles. The use of spatial audio techniques and dynamic mixing gives the viewer a sense of being inside the arena, surrounded by danger and spectacle. On the visual side, Industrial Light and Magic and Framestore led the VFX work, seamlessly integrating digital effects with practical elements. The flooded Colosseum, naval battles, and creature encounters were rendered with a blend of CGI and real-world textures, maintaining the tactile realism that defines Scott's historical epics. The visual effects never overshadow the narrative. Instead, they serve it, enhancing atmosphere, tension, and thematic symbolism. Together, the sound and visual effects in Gladiator 2 create a cohesive sensory experience. They amplify the stakes, deepen immersion, and reinforce the film's exploration of legacy, brutality, and resistance. It's a technical achievement that supports the story without distracting from it. Gladiator 2 explores a complex web of themes that echo both the legacy of the original film and the evolving moral and political questions of our time. At its core, the film is a meditation on power, identity, memory, and the cost of empire, conveyed through a story that blends personal transformation with historical spectacle. Legacy and identity. The most prominent theme is the weight of legacy, both inherited and self-made. Lucius, as the son of Lucilla and the spiritual heir of Maximus, must reconcile the legend he grew up idolizing with the fractured reality of Rome. His journey reflects a deeper question: are we defined by where we come from, or by what we choose to become? The film uses his evolution to challenge the notion of destiny, portraying identity as something shaped not by blood, but by moral conviction and sacrifice. Visuals of statues crumbling, banners fading, and old ruins overgrown emphasize the fragility of legacy and the need to find meaning beyond myth. Power and corruption. Much like its predecessor, Gladiator II paints a grim portrait of political power, how it seduces, distorts, and ultimately destroys. The characters orbiting Rome's throne each represent different responses to authority: ambition, defiance, manipulation, and duty. The film draws clear parallels between spectacle and control. The Colosseum remains a symbol not just of entertainment, but of distraction and domination. Characters who seek power often lose themselves in its pursuit, while those who reject it discover something more lasting: purpose. Freedom and oppression. The gladiatorial arena is again used as a metaphor for broader systems of oppression. Whether as a literal slave or a noble manipulated by unseen forces, nearly every character is imprisoned by something: fear, guilt, political pressure, or social expectation. The film challenges the idea of freedom, asking whether it can ever truly exist within an empire built on conquest and exploitation. These themes are reinforced visually through confined spaces, heavy architecture, and scenes of public execution that feel more theatrical than just. Memory and myth-making. Gladiator II is steeped in questions about how we remember, and who controls that memory. Maximus's name is still spoken, but often as a symbol rather than a man. The film critiques the construction of myth as a tool for control and propaganda. Characters manipulate history to justify present actions, and the line between truth and legend becomes increasingly blurred. Through dream sequences, flashbacks, and symbolic visuals, like ghostly echoes in the arena, the film shows how the past haunts the present and how history is often rewritten to serve power. Faith and redemption. Several characters in the film wrestle with spiritual disillusionment, especially as the empire decays. Temples crumble, rituals feel hollow, and divine favor is questioned. Yet redemption is a driving force, whether through sacrifice, forgiveness, or defiance. For Lucius in particular, the path to redemption is not through vengeance but through moral clarity and personal transformation. This spiritual undercurrent gives the film unexpected depth and emotional resonance. The fall of empire. Perhaps the most resonant theme for modern viewers is the film's depiction of a declining empire, still vast, still powerful, but hollowed out from within. Greed, division, and ideological decay rot the foundations of Rome, and the film offers no easy solutions. It asks whether such a structure can be reformed, or whether collapse is inevitable. Through both visual metaphors, crumbling statues, corrupted officials, burning cities, and character arcs, Gladiator II presents the fall not as a dramatic moment, but as a slow unraveling of values and identity. In total, Gladiator II is more than a historical epic. It's a reflection on what it means to inherit a broken world and decide what to do with it. The themes are rich, layered, and delivered through a combination of powerful performances, sharp writing, and evocative imagery. For the audience, the impact is lasting, prompting not just awe, but introspection about history, justice, and the cost of being remembered. Gladiator II explores a tapestry of interwoven themes that reflect both personal transformation and societal decay, using its narrative, characters, and visual language to evoke timeless questions about power, legacy, and identity. At its core, the film grapples with legacy and identity. Lucius's journey from exile to gladiator is not merely physical. It's a psychological reckoning with the shadow of Maximus and the expectations placed upon him. His struggle to define himself outside of inherited mythos speaks to the broader human desire for autonomy and meaning. This theme is reinforced through visual motifs, mirrored shots of Lucius in chains, echoes of the original film's framing, and through restrained dialogue that emphasizes introspection over exposition. Power and corruption form another central pillar. The twin emperors, Geta and Caracalla, embody Rome's descent into grotesque excess and moral collapse. Their stylized performances and opulent surroundings contrast sharply with the grounded realism of the gladiators, highlighting the widening chasm between rulers and the ruled. Macrinus's manipulative ascent and Acacius's conflicted loyalty further complicate the portrayal of power, suggesting that ambition often thrives in moral ambiguity. The theme of resistance and redemption is threaded through the supporting cast. Characters like Ravi and Gracchus represent quieter forms of defiance, healing, idealism, and memory, while Lucilla's arc reflects the cost of survival in a corrupt system. These figures offer emotional ballast to Lucius's journey, suggesting that heroism is not always forged in battle but in endurance and sacrifice. Visually, the film reinforces its themes through stark contrasts. The flooded Colosseum as a symbol of Rome's decay, the use of light and shadow to delineate moral clarity, and costume design that reflects character evolution. The score and sound design further amplify emotional beats, guiding the audience through moments of triumph, despair, and reflection. For viewers, Gladiator 2 invites contemplation on the nature of heroism, the burden of history, and the fragility of empires. While it may not reach the emotional immediacy of its predecessor, its thematic ambition offers a layered experience, one that resonates beyond the spectacle and into the realm of philosophical inquiry. Gladiator 2 is rich with symbolism and metaphor, using visual motifs, character arcs, and narrative structures to explore deeper truths beneath the surface of its historical drama. These symbolic elements serve not only to enrich the viewing experience, but to anchor the story in universal human struggles: power, legacy, freedom, and transformation. The arena as a metaphor for society. Perhaps the most enduring metaphor in the film is the gladiatorial arena itself. More than just a place of combat, it represents the machinery of empire, where violence is used to entertain, control, and define worth. Fighters are stripped of identity, reduced to spectacle for the pleasure of the elite. This space becomes a microcosm of Roman society, where survival depends on performance, and truth is subjugated to the politics of the crowd. Lucius's eventual entry into the arena is symbolic of his forced confrontation with this system, not only physically, but morally and ideologically. Masks, helmets, and hidden faces. Throughout the film, there is a recurring motif of masks and covered faces. Gladiators wear helmets that obscure their identities, senators hide behind veils of diplomacy, and characters speak in riddles or false intentions. These visual choices reflect the theme of duality, the divide between how one is seen and who one truly is. Lucius's journey, in particular, involves removing these metaphorical layers to confront his true self, stepping out from behind the shadow of Maximus and the weight of his lineage. Crumbling statues and faded monuments. The presence of damaged or decaying statues of Roman gods and past emperors is a subtle but powerful symbol of a fading empire. These broken icons serve as reminders of the impermanence of power and the fragility of legacy. As characters grapple with questions of immortality, through bloodline, myth, or honor, the film visually undercuts their certainty, showing that even the most glorified symbols eventually erode. This symbolism underscores the film's meditation on mortality and the illusion of greatness. Fire and dust as symbols of rebirth and decay. Fire and dust appear repeatedly, often at moments of transformation or reckoning. Dust rising in the arena becomes a callback to Maximus's spiritual journey in the original film, symbolizing the boundary between life and death, memory and myth. Fire is equally layered. It consumes, purifies, and destroys. It appears during sieges, executions, and personal revelations, representing both destruction of the old and the forging of something new. These elements mirror Lucius's internal rebirth as he redefines who he is beyond legacy and empire. Birds, sky, and the idea of freedom. In contrast to the heavy, confined architecture of Rome, the open sky often symbolizes freedom, escape, or clarity. Birds soaring above prisons or battlegrounds appear during scenes where characters dream of escape or question the cost of their bondage. For Lucius, the image of the sky, unreachable yet always present, becomes a quiet, recurring visual metaphor for the freedom he seeks, not just physical, but emotional and moral. In scenes of reflection or silence, wide shots of open landscapes hint at the possibility of peace in a world dominated by conflict. Myth and memory as weapons. The film explores how myths, especially those surrounding Maximus, are weaponized for political purposes. His image is invoked by rebels and rulers alike, twisted to serve opposing causes. This manipulation of memory becomes a central metaphor for propaganda and the dangers of glorifying history without understanding its consequences. Lucius must determine whether to live in that shadow or break free of it, giving new meaning to the idea of heroism in a corrupt world. The labyrinth of the palace. Certain scenes set in the Roman palace are intentionally framed like a maze. Tight corridors, winding halls, guarded gates, symbolizing the complexity and entrapment of political power. Characters often move through this space with hesitation or suspicion, reinforcing the idea that navigating the political system is as much a mental battle as a physical one. These sequences reflect themes of manipulation, deception, and the psychological cost of power. In essence, Gladiator 2 uses its symbolic elements not just for visual flair, but to layer meaning into its story. The metaphors are woven naturally into the narrative, offering viewers a richer, more contemplative experience. For those willing to look beyond the surface, the film invites interpretation and reflection on history, morality, and what it truly means to be free. Gladiator 2 is rich with symbolic and metaphorical elements that deepen its narrative and invite layered interpretation. Ridley Scott's sequel uses visual motifs, character arcs, and historical allegory to explore themes of decay, resistance, and identity in ways that resonate beyond the surface spectacle. The flooded Colosseum serves as a central metaphor for Rome's moral and political collapse. Once a symbol of imperial grandeur, its transformation into a waterlogged arena reflects the erosion of tradition and the drowning of civic virtue. The presence of sharks and exotic beasts in this setting amplifies the sense of unnatural spectacle, suggesting that Rome's hunger for entertainment has become grotesque and self-destructive. Lucius's journey is framed by mirrored imagery and mythic references. His exile and return echo the myth of Romulus and Remus, reinforced by the appearance of the Capitoline wolf statue during his final confrontation. This visual cue links Lucius to Rome's foundational myth, positioning him as a symbolic rebirth of the Republic, an heir not just to Maximus, but to Rome's lost ideals. The twin emperors, Geta and Caracalla, embody duality and fragmentation. Their stylized makeup and theatrical behavior suggest a split psyche of the empire itself, one half calculating, the other erratic. Their rule is a metaphor for the dangers of unchecked power and the absurdity of inherited authority. The use of damnatio memoriae, historically associated with Caracalla's erasure of Geta, adds a layer of commentary on historical revisionism and the manipulation of legacy. Macrinus's character functions as an allegory for capitalist opportunism. His role as a merchant who profits from war and spectacle positions him as a critique of commodified violence and political manipulation. His comparison to modern populist figures, as noted by Ridley Scott, adds a contemporary allegorical dimension, suggesting that the film's Rome is not just ancient, it's a mirror to modern political decay. Even the use of Virgil's poetry by Lucius, particularly the quote about the gates of hell, serves as a metaphor for personal and societal descent. It frames Lucius's arc as a spiritual and moral odyssey, where redemption is not guaranteed but must be earned through suffering and resistance. These symbolic layers enrich Gladiator 2 by transforming its historical drama into a meditation on power, memory, and rebirth. They invite viewers to see beyond the swords and sand, into a narrative that critiques empire while yearning for renewal. Gladiator 2 delivers a deeply affecting emotional journey, guiding its audience through a spectrum of human experience: loss, identity, rage, redemption, and hope. Far from being just a historical epic filled with action and political intrigue, the film invites viewers to engage on a personal, often intimate level, through the struggles and inner transformations of its characters. The emotional weight begins with Lucius, whose quiet suffering and moral confusion form the heart of the film. His estrangement from Rome, his internal conflict between inherited legend and personal truth, and his uncertain place in a corrupt world create a character who is not only relatable, but deeply sympathetic. The film evokes empathy by making his pain and uncertainty feel grounded and real, especially in scenes of silence or reflection, where grief or guilt is conveyed not through exposition, but through body language and restraint. One of the most emotionally resonant moments occurs when Lucius first sets foot inside the Colosseum. The camera doesn't rush, it lingers, capturing the dust, the distant roar of the crowd, and the echo of the past. For fans of the original film, it's a powerful callback. But for new viewers, it's also a turning point, where a man must face the symbol of everything he's feared, remembered, and inherited. The emotional connection here is layered. Nostalgia, dread, duty, and legacy all collide in a single, unforgettable sequence. The film also engages the audience through suspense and moral tension. Key character confrontations, particularly between Lucius and General Acacius, or between Lucius and his own past, are written and performed with a slow-burning intensity that holds the viewer's attention. These scenes are less about external stakes and more about internal conflict, creating a reflective, even haunting mood that lingers beyond the screen. Fear and brutality are present, but they're never empty. Battle scenes are terrifying in their realism, not just because of the violence, but because of what they reveal about the cost of survival. Viewers feel the exhaustion, the moral compromises, and the emotional scars these characters endure. When blood is shed, it's not to thrill, it's to expose what's at stake, both physically and spiritually. Moments of quiet tenderness also stand out. Scenes between Lucius and Lucilla, full of unspoken grief, guarded affection, and mutual regret, strike a powerful emotional chord. Their relationship is marked by years of separation and political trauma, yet there's a warmth and vulnerability in their connection that gives the film its emotional grounding. These scenes allow the audience to pause, reflect, and feel. By the time the film reaches its final act, the audience is not just watching a spectacle, they are invested in a soul's reckoning. The climax is thrilling, but also bittersweet, as Lucius must confront not just his enemies, but the person he has become. Whether he triumphs, sacrifices, or finds peace, the emotional payoff is deeply satisfying because it's earned through gradual, honest development. Ultimately, Gladiator 2 doesn't manipulate its audience with sentimentality, it earns emotion through character truth, narrative restraint, and visual sincerity. It speaks to universal human experiences. The longing to be more than what we're born into, the pain of loss, the pull of legacy, and the courage to define one's own destiny. These themes resonate long after the credits roll, making Gladiator 2 not just a gripping sequel, but an emotionally enduring cinematic journey. Gladiator 2 delivers a visceral emotional journey that resonates through its blend of spectacle, character introspection, and thematic depth. While it may not replicate the raw catharsis of the original, the sequel crafts its own path to audience engagement by exploring grief, vengeance, and the search for identity in a fractured world. Empathy is evoked primarily through Lucius's arc. His transformation from a peaceful exile to a hardened gladiator is marked by loss, betrayal, and moral reckoning. Scenes depicting the death of his wife and his forced separation from his homeland are emotionally charged, grounding the narrative in personal tragedy. His interactions with Ravi, the gladiator-turned-healer, offer moments of quiet reflection that contrast with the brutality of the arena, allowing viewers to connect with Lucius's internal struggle. Excitement is driven by the film's kinetic action sequences and high-stakes confrontations. The flooded Colosseum battles, featuring sharks and a battle-armored rhinoceros, are not only visually arresting but also emotionally intense, as they test Lucius's resolve and physical limits. These scenes are choreographed to maximize tension, with sound design and score amplifying the adrenaline. Fear and unease are introduced through the twin emperors, whose erratic behavior and grotesque indulgence create a sense of instability. Their unpredictable cruelty, paired with stylized performances, injects a surreal menace into the political backdrop. The audience is made to feel the precariousness of Rome's future and the danger faced by its citizens. Reflection emerges through thematic parallels with the original film. Lucius's journey mirrors Maximus's, but with a more introspective tone. The film invites viewers to consider the weight of legacy, the cost of survival, and the meaning of resistance. Scenes between Lucius and Lucilla, particularly their emotionally fraught reunion, offer poignant commentary on abandonment, forgiveness, and maternal sacrifice. One of the film's most powerful emotional connections occurs during Lucius's final confrontation in the Colosseum, where echoes of Maximus's legacy and Rome's founding myths converge. The use of Virgil's poetry and symbolic imagery, such as the Capitoline wolf, elevates the moment from personal vengeance to cultural reckoning, leaving audiences with a sense of closure and renewal. Ultimately, Gladiator II engages viewers not just through its spectacle, but through its layered emotional beats and philosophical undertones. It asks its audience to feel, to question, and to remember, making its impact linger long after the final battle ends. The pacing and narrative structure of Gladiator II are deliberate, calculated, and deeply character-centric, designed to balance the grandeur of epic storytelling with the intimacy of personal transformation. Rather than racing through plot points, the film unfolds with confidence, allowing tension to build gradually while carefully layering emotional and thematic depth. Structurally, the film is divided into three distinct but organically connected acts: the exile and awakening of Lucius, his reluctant return to Rome, and the final confrontation that forces him to choose between legacy and self-determination. This classical arc mirrors the hero's journey, but Gladiator II adds complexity by infusing it with political intrigue, spiritual uncertainty, and emotional trauma. The result is a narrative that feels mythic in scale but human in focus. The pacing in the first act is restrained, prioritizing atmosphere and internal conflict over immediate action. This may feel slow for viewers expecting a fast return to blood and glory, but the quiet, reflective tone lays essential groundwork for the emotional payoffs to come. We spend time with Lucius in isolation, learning who he is, what he fears, and what he's running from. These moments of stillness create intimacy and draw the audience into his psychological world. As the story transitions into its middle section, the pace tightens. Political schemes, shifting allegiances, and the looming presence of the Colosseum push the narrative forward with growing urgency. Tension builds not just through events, but through decisions, each conversation and confrontation narrowing the space between Lucius and his inevitable reckoning. The film smartly interweaves quieter, character-driven moments with bursts of action or revelation, maintaining viewer interest without sacrificing thematic integrity. Action scenes are spaced carefully, used to punctuate emotional or narrative turning points rather than dominate the runtime. Each battle or duel carries weight because it's not just spectacle, it's an extension of a character's inner struggle. The arena scenes, in particular, are structured to escalate both physically and psychologically, leading to a climactic third act that delivers on both narrative momentum and emotional catharsis. One of the strengths of the film's structure is its ability to sustain mystery and ambiguity without becoming convoluted. Through flashbacks, whispered histories, and symbolic imagery, the audience gradually uncovers the full emotional landscape of Lucius's past and the true nature of Rome's decay. These elements are never over-explained, allowing viewers to stay intellectually and emotionally engaged. The final act is where the film's pacing accelerates most noticeably, bringing threads of character, theme, and conflict together in a crescendo that is both tragic and redemptive. Yet even in its fastest moments, Gladiator II never loses sight of its characters. The resolution feels earned because it is the product of slow-burn development and narrative discipline. Overall, Gladiator II embraces a more mature pacing style than its predecessor. It favors emotional build-up over relentless momentum, philosophical inquiry over pure entertainment. While this may challenge some viewers expecting a traditional action-driven sequel, the structure rewards patience. It offers a rich, immersive experience that crescendos with both intellectual and emotional power, an epic that values resonance over rush and depth over immediacy. Gladiator II employs a pacing and narrative structure that aims to mirror the rhythm of its predecessor while introducing new emotional and political stakes. The film opens with a large-scale invasion of Numidia, immediately immersing viewers in action and setting a brisk tone that persists throughout. This momentum-driven approach reflects Ridley Scott's preference for fast-paced storytelling, often prioritizing forward motion over prolonged introspection. The structure follows a familiar arc: exile, rise through gladiatorial ranks, confrontation with corrupt rulers. While this framework offers clarity and thematic continuity, it also risks predictability. Critics have noted that the film retraces many beats from the original Gladiator, including mirrored character trajectories and recycled plot devices. Lucius's journey, though emotionally distinct, unfolds in a pattern reminiscent of Maximus's, which may dilute the impact of key turning points for seasoned viewers. Tension is built effectively in the arena sequences and political subplots. The flooded Colosseum battles, for instance, escalate stakes through inventive set pieces and visual spectacle. However, some transitions between action and character development feel abrupt, with emotional arcs occasionally sidelined to maintain pacing. Lucius's internal conflict and relationships, particularly with Lucilla and Acacius, are compelling but underexplored, leaving certain emotional beats underdeveloped. The film's third act accelerates rapidly, resolving multiple plot threads in quick succession. While this maintains engagement, it sacrifices depth, particularly in Macrinus's arc, which critics argue deserved more narrative space given its complexity and Denzel Washington's commanding performance. Overall, Gladiator 2 sustains interest through kinetic pacing and high-stakes spectacle, but its adherence to familiar structural rhythms and occasional narrative shortcuts limit its emotional resonance. The balance between action and character development is uneven, yet the film's ambition and scale ensure it remains a compelling, if imperfect, continuation of the saga. Gladiator 2 stands as both a continuation of Ridley Scott's legacy in historical epic filmmaking and a bold, introspective deviation from the genre's more conventional offerings. When compared to its genre peers, films like Braveheart, Troy, The Last Duel, or even Scott's own Kingdom of Heaven, the sequel reveals itself as a more meditative, character-driven piece that blends epic scale with emotional depth, distinguishing itself through a fusion of restraint and ambition. In direct comparison to Gladiator 2000, the sequel is more introspective and morally ambiguous. While the original followed a clear revenge arc with Maximus as a stoic, virtuous hero confronting tyranny, Gladiator 2 centers on Lucius, a man caught in a fog of political legacy, personal guilt, and fractured identity. The stakes in the first film were driven by honor and vengeance. In the sequel, they are shaped by doubt, transformation, and the burden of history. This shift gives Gladiator 2 a more philosophical tone, where questions about power, memory, and truth eclipse simpler narratives of victory or defeat. Compared to other historical epics like Braveheart or Troy, which focus heavily on nationalism, heroism, and war-driven glory, Gladiator 2 deliberately pulls back. It avoids glamorizing combat or positioning its characters as legends in waiting. Instead, it critiques the very systems, political, imperial, religious, that create such myths. The battles are brutal, but they carry emotional and ideological consequences. This puts the film in closer thematic conversation with The Last Duel, also directed by Scott, which similarly examines power, justice, and narrative manipulation through a critical historical lens. Visually, Gladiator 2 retains the grandeur expected of the genre: lavish Roman architecture, sweeping battlefields, ornate costume design, but avoids excess. Where films like Star 300 Star or Clash of the Titans rely on stylized action and exaggerated spectacle, Gladiator 2 is grounded, tactile, and textured. The restraint in CGI use, the emphasis on natural light, and the commitment to realism elevate the film's credibility and immersion. It fits more comfortably with the prestige end of historical epics, rather than the fantasy-infused branch of the genre. Narratively, it echoes Kingdom of Heaven in its questioning of empire and its characters' search for spiritual and moral clarity. Both films feature protagonists wrestling with their place in systems that exploit faith and valor for political ends. However, Gladiator 2 avoids the sprawling, sometimes fragmented structure of Kingdom of Heaven, instead offering a more focused and emotionally cohesive journey centered on Lucius. In terms of recent genre trends, Gladiator 2 feels refreshingly classical in structure yet modern in tone. While many contemporary historical films attempt to modernize dialogue or action to appeal to broader audiences, this film maintains authenticity in speech, costume, and pacing. Yet it also reflects modern sensibilities. Its characters are emotionally layered, its female roles more complex, and its political themes sharply relevant, particularly in how it explores propaganda, myth-making, and institutional decay. Ultimately, what makes Gladiator 2 unique is its refusal to merely replicate the success formula of its predecessor or its peers. Instead, it expands the world and themes of Gladiator while challenging genre conventions, opting for contemplation over conquest, identity over ideology, and emotional resonance over historical pageantry. In doing so, it secures its place not just as a worthy sequel, but as a distinctive and mature entry in the pantheon of historical cinema. Gladiator 2 stands as both a continuation and a reflection of the sword and sandal genre, drawing direct lineage from Ridley Scott's own 2000 original while engaging with broader cinematic trends in historical epics. Its uniqueness lies in how it balances homage with reinvention, though not without critique. Compared to its predecessor, Gladiator 2 amplifies the scale and spectacle. Where Gladiator focused on the intimate revenge arc of Maximus, the sequel expands into political allegory and mythic symbolism. The flooded Colosseum, twin emperors, and exotic beasts like sharks and baboons push the genre toward surrealism, echoing Scott's recent work in Napoleon and The Last Duel, which also blend historical drama with stylized excess. Within the genre, it shares DNA with films like Ben-Hur, Spartacus, and Troy, but diverges in tone. Unlike the moral clarity of Ben-Hur or the romantic heroism of Troy, Gladiator 2 embraces ambiguity. Lucius is not a traditional hero, his motivations are fractured, his legacy uncertain. This aligns with modern trends in historical cinema that favor flawed protagonists and political nuance over clear-cut valor. Ridley Scott's directorial trademarks, epic scale, moral complexity, and visual grandeur, are evident, but the film also reflects contemporary sensibilities. The use of IMAX, advanced VFX, and a darker emotional palette situated alongside recent genre peers like The Northman or Kingdom of Heaven, though it leans more into operatic spectacle than grounded realism. What makes Gladiator 2 distinct is its attempt to mythologize legacy itself. It's not just a sequel, it's a meditation on sequels, on the burden of continuation, and on the cyclical nature of empire. Whether it succeeds fully is debated, but its ambition places it firmly within the evolving landscape of historical epics that seek to interrogate rather than glorify the past. Gladiator 2 carries a potent undercurrent of cultural and social commentary that elevates it beyond its historical setting, offering a mirror to contemporary anxieties about power, identity, legacy, and institutional decay. Though set in ancient Rome, the film draws clear thematic parallels to modern political and social dynamics, inviting viewers to reflect on the structures and ideologies that shape our own world. One of the film's most prominent critiques lies in its depiction of empire and spectacle. Rome is presented not as a glorious civilization at its peak, but as a crumbling superpower sustained by illusion, bloodsport, and propaganda. The Colosseum, Rome's grandest symbol of imperial pride, is shown as both a stage for violence and a tool for public distraction. This metaphor resonates strongly in today's media-driven culture, where spectacle often overshadows substance, and public attention is manipulated through curated narratives. The film suggests that when entertainment becomes a means of political control, truth and justice are often the first casualties. The story also engages with the theme of intergenerational trauma and the burden of legacy, a subject deeply relevant to modern audiences. Lucius, born into a world shaped by the actions and myths of those before him, must confront a history he didn't choose yet cannot escape. His internal conflict mirrors the experiences of many today who grapple with inherited identities, social expectations, or the moral weight of national and familial history. The film's message is clear: to move forward, one must not blindly inherit the past but examine and, if necessary, reject it. The depiction of political decay and moral compromise within Rome's leadership carries pointed relevance in today's global climate of institutional mistrust. Senators, generals, and emperors in Gladiator 2 are portrayed as masters of manipulation, more concerned with survival and optics than truth or accountability. The film critiques leadership built on ego, deception, and tradition rather than vision or integrity, a commentary that aligns with rising disillusionment toward modern political systems worldwide. On a social level, Gladiator 2 explores the dehumanization of individuals within oppressive systems. Whether it's enslaved gladiators, manipulated generals, or nobles used as pawns in imperial games, the film illustrates how institutions, be they military, religious, or political, reduce people to roles rather than seeing them as individuals. This speaks to ongoing conversations about human rights, class disparity, systemic oppression, and the struggle for personal autonomy within larger socio-political frameworks. The film also quietly acknowledges multiculturalism and the cost of conquest, reflecting Rome's vast empire through its cast of diverse characters and the visual integration of various cultural influences in costumes, dialects, and set design. Yet instead of celebrating conquest, the film critiques it, exposing the fractures and resentments that arise when power is centralized through domination rather than unity. This commentary aligns with contemporary discussions about colonialism, cultural erasure, and the lingering impact of empire on modern identities and borders. From a gendered perspective, while Gladiator 2 remains male-centered, it gives greater narrative agency to female characters like Lucilla, who plays a critical role in shaping the political and emotional core of the film. Her character embodies resilience and quiet rebellion, challenging the traditional sidelining of women in historical epics. Her presence serves as a nod to broader conversations about representation and the overlooked influence of women in both history and modern power structures. In essence, Gladiator 2 doesn't simply recreate a historical moment, it interprets it through a modern lens. By doing so, it engages with today's social and political discourse in meaningful ways. It critiques the glorification of empire, questions inherited power, and challenges viewers to reconsider how myths are built, who controls them, and why. In a time marked by political division, cultural reckoning, and historical re-evaluation, Gladiator 2 feels not just relevant, but necessary. Gladiator 2 engages with cultural and political commentary through allegory, character dynamics, and visual symbolism, offering reflections on contemporary issues while rooted in historical fiction. Ridley Scott's sequel critiques the nature of power, legacy, and societal decay in ways that resonate with modern audiences. The film's portrayal of the twin emperors, Geta and Caracalla, as erratic, indulgent rulers serves as a metaphor for political dysfunction and the dangers of inherited authority. Their theatrical excess and detachment from reality mirror concerns about populism, performative leadership, and the erosion of democratic ideals. This allegorical framing invites viewers to consider how spectacle and manipulation can distract from governance and accountability. Macrinus, portrayed by Denzel Washington, embodies themes of social mobility and capitalist opportunism. As a former slave-turned-gladiator merchant, his ascent critiques systems that reward exploitation and ambition over ethics. His character reflects anxieties about economic inequality and the commodification of violence, drawing parallels to modern power structures where influence is often gained through manipulation and spectacle. The film also touches on issues of historical erasure and identity. The use of damnatio memoriae, the Roman practice of erasing a person's legacy, is dramatized through Caracalla's treatment of Geta, symbolizing how history is rewritten by those in power. This theme resonates with contemporary debates around cultural memory, revisionism, and the politics of representation. Critics have noted the film's handling of race and historical accuracy, particularly in its depiction of Roman figures of African and Syrian heritage as pale-skinned characters. This casting choice has sparked discussion about representation and the whitewashing of history, highlighting ongoing challenges in Hollywood's portrayal of diverse cultures. Additionally, the film's emphasis on rebellion and resistance, through Lucius's arc and the gladiator's defiance, speaks to broader movements advocating for justice and systemic change. The narrative's focus on personal agency amid oppressive systems aligns with contemporary struggles for equity and reform. In sum, Gladiator 2 uses its historical setting to comment on modern political and cultural dynamics. While not overtly didactic, its allegorical layers and character arcs invite reflection on power, identity, and the cyclical nature of empire, making it relevant to today's societal discourse. Thank you so much for joining me on this in-depth journey through Gladiator 2. Whether you're a longtime fan of the original or experiencing this world for the first time, there's no denying the impact this film leaves, both emotionally and thematically. We've explored its characters, visuals, symbolism, and the powerful questions it raises about legacy, freedom, and the nature of power. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What did Gladiator 2 mean to you? Did it live up to your expectations? Was there a performance, a moment, or a message that truly stayed with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I always enjoy reading your insights and starting meaningful conversations about film. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like to let me know, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss our upcoming breakdowns. We've got more great content on the way, including reviews of this year's most talked about releases and a few retrospectives on timeless classics. So stay tuned. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, keep exploring stories that challenge, inspire, and stay with you long after the credits roll.